All right, cool. So I'm gonna start with the modular motor mount adapter system. So basically start by sanding off all the laser cut char, because that will affect the bond of the wood to your mother tube probably. It's just a good idea. So I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me sand all these rings down, but that's kind of where I'd start. And then they actually do give you directions for this, so we'll just follow along with that. Essentially, the first thing you want to do is press on these T-nuts, but kind of a little snafu. I don't know if you can see, but the prong on the T-nuts is actually a little bit taller than our 1/4 inch ply. So we could press these in and just have it stick out a little, but we're going to be classier than that. We could cut these all the way off and probably just epoxy them in. I think I'll compromise and I'll trim this down and still epoxy it in. So basically grab some junk pliers, and I got an old pair of dikes here. I'm going to try and snip this at an angle such that I can press it in properly. So we'll just not look at it. And then, yeah, that's perfect. So we'll do that 4 times and then go over to the vise. Cool. So you have some decisions to make now. Do you want the lasered letters facing out or in? I want them in. I don't want to see them. So my T-nuts are going to get pushed in from this side. You could hammer these in, but I'm going to try to be a little more civilized and use a mechanical advantage. And actually, here's how classy I'm going to be. I'm actually going to put a nice piece of soft MDF back there too, so I don't crush my plywood ring. But you could just smash these in with a board and a hammer too. Like, let's be real. These things are not going to have an easy life. And they're on the bottom of the rocket. No one's ever going to see them. So yeah, look at how pro that is. Nothing sticking through. Nice and pushed in there. And honestly, the force of the bolt is going to be pulling it this way. So I'm not overly concerned about epoxying the sleeve there. I'll probably slather some epoxy on the back just because it's going to get covered anyways. There's going to be internal fillets, so I don't even care. I'm just going to push the rest in. So we got all our T-nuts pushed in, looking good. The next thing is all the notches on all 3 centering rings. They're laser cut, so like they're pretty snug. I'm gonna sand them just to open these up a little so the fins can slide in and out, you know, somewhat easily. And then probably clean up the edges of the fins from all the laser char, especially on the root edge that's gonna get glued. So we'll have some more sanding to do. That's not a big deal. And then we're ready to start epoxying. Oh, the mother tube, I went ahead and stripped the glassine off. So that's that layer of like really smooth, nice looking stuff on the LOC tubes. This is the 54mm motor mount tube. I'm gonna build this one first. I'm also gonna build a 38 too, but basically you start on one of the corners, peel it back a little. And then what I've found is if you can keep, see how these spirals go at an angle? If you peel in such a way that you're about 90 degrees to those, or like maybe a little acute, it tends to work well. We'll see how this one goes now that I got it on camera. Because what happens is you'll start tearing away from that edge, and then if you go a little more acute, it kind of brings you back. I could be making this up too, but I mean, this is how I do it. We're having moderate success here. Now I'm also going to try something. I only want about a 1/2 inch of this exposed at the edge, maybe a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to mark about a 1/4 inch around the bottom, score it, and then leave that there so when I paint it, it looks pretty on the bottom. This is kind of an experiment, totally not necessary. We're doing it live. See how we feel about it. Look at that, and then we got a little 1/4 inch that'll be somewhat smooth because we're ridiculous. The other thing is get some runny CA. And since we're going to be slamming tubes in and out of here, I just want to seal this edge so it's nice and hardened. Try not to drop any CA down in the tube, or else you're going to have to sand that out later. And then if you want to touch that, you can glue yourself to your rocket, or you can just let it dry in the air. I'll take a little piece of ply, just kind of spread that out. Something's better than nothing. Bam. All right, now we got to sand some centering rings, mix up some epoxy, and we'll be back. So this is going to be the aftmost ring of the MMAS system, right? So the idea is this is the bottom bulkhead of your 54mm adapter. It's going to slide up into there, and then you're going to fasten it, you know, to the system using this hardware through these T-nuts. Well, there's no slots cut in this just yet. So what I like to do while it's still easy is you center everything up here. You flip it over, and then you can mark where each T-nut is. And then we can drill a little hole here to accept this hardware. I thought this was funny, so I actually went over to grab my 38mm ring. Boy, that looks tiny compared to the 54. Anyways, I went to mark it, and looks like they figured that out already. So this is what we're going to make the 54 one look like. And that actually lines up pretty darn perfectly. We're probably jumping all over the place here, but that's how it goes. Breaking it into a bunch of little projects. So, MMAS front centering ring. I have decided obsessive compulsively to make sure all of the burned laser text is facing inside the rocket. If you ever crawl in there, you'll be able to read things, I guess. So, everything's sanded up, interior and exterior circumferences, so they fit in their perspective tubes. So forward centering ring, this is where your recovery gear attaches. And I am using this awesome 1-inch nylon triple looped Y harness that comes with the kit. So step 1, I guess step 0, you want to take some of the, I guess this is probably 1/4 hardware, run those nuts all the way up on each side of these. This is where we fast forward and play some music. They also give you washers to put on each end, which is awesome. It's probably a good idea to run like red Loctite on these. I'll probably just put epoxy on it later. So I already did it. Don't forget to run your loops of nylon through the U-bolt before you bolt it on. And we're trying to keep these nice and straight. So I want each loop like this. Cool. Then they give you a nice backing plate that goes on. That also acts as a giant washer, I guess. Then you run these down. Same thing to the other side. Not forgetting to put your loop through here. Something like this. And when I glue up the whole Fincan, I'm going to be applying liberal amounts of epoxy to this. This is kind of a one-shot deal. This is going to live in there forever. Now there is some slop in this, you know, it's slotted, this backing plate. So see how it can kind of go side to side? That's typical of any fitting. You just want to make sure that the metal doesn't interfere with the inner or outer circumference there. If it does, it's not a big deal. You're just going to have to hit it with a file or a grinder, but paying a little bit of attention right now can avoid all that work. And then you can see this is kind of the main attachment point for all your recovery harness, and we have no loops in it. This is sweet. I just got to grab a wrench and snug these up. Something like, I should know this off the top of my head. If it's 1/4 hardware, it's a 7/16 knot. I didn't know that off the top of my head, but you will now. Trick number 2. Let me pop one of these off to show you what I'm about to explain. So the mid and aft centering ring are notched to receive your fins, which is a sweet system that helps index everything. What you're going to want to do is just take a straight edge and a pencil and go ahead and connect all those so you have a reference line that kind of goes to the inner diameter. Go ahead and slide that on your mother tube, mark where each fin's going to be, and then using an angle or a door frame, anything you can do to make straight lines, I went ahead and just ran reference lines up the length of the tube. So now I can go ahead and slam my centering rings down. I also numbered each fin and each corresponding notch. So as I was sanding and I made sure they fit, I could kind of keep track of all that. Probably not necessary, but you know, why not? And so basically you can very easily put all these on and you know they're in line, rather than like doing the old rocket fin kind of, you know, guesswork. Our goal is to fly pretty straight with this. Yeah. Time to epoxy centering rings. So I've basically dry fit fins on, figuring out where I want centering rings, marked them. The plan is mix up some total boat epoxy. That's what I'm using for this project. I don't have any silica to add in yet because it's stuck in the mail somewhere. So we're kind of just like tacking these in now, and then we'll mix up some silica and epoxy later and do nice fillets later. But the general strategy is, so here's the aft end, have all the centering rings aft of their marks, put epoxy, you know, on the forward end, and then as I slide the rings into position, hopefully it creates kind of a little fillet bead of epoxy on the forward end. That way, as the thrust of the motor is kind of shoving this into the rocket, the fillet on that side is the one that matters. Like I said, we're going to be doing big thick fillets after anyway, so yeah, it's not that critical, but that's just kind of my approach. The topmost centering ring, I just set 1 inch from the end. The bottommost, just an 1/8 inch. And the reason why I'm keeping the bottommost one so close to the edge is I want this to actually be recessed up in the airframe a little, so I can set the airframe on the ground like a level surface, and the fins and everything will just stand it up when it's loaded. Like if this is too far back, by the time you put your adapter in and load a case and get your retention system in, that may stick below the bottom plane of the airframe, and then if you want to just set the thing on the pavement somewhere, you know, it would tip over. So yeah, this is kind of the first big epoxy, so we'll have a drink to calm the nerves. and we'll start up top. Actually, we'll start at the bottom. I did take the recovery harness and just kind of bunch it up, and then we'll tuck it away in there. All right, so the plan is just to take this and kind of run it around like a paintbrush. Oh, other pro tip, those lines you made to mark where the fins go, don't put epoxy there, or else when this cures, the fins won't sit in flush yet. So that's another nice reason to put those marks in. I pushed the T-nuts in such that the lasered letters would actually face out. That way, you know, at a glance, you can see you got the right adapter. All right. So there is this thrust ring that's supposed to go in the mother tube that this forward bulkhead centering ring is supposed to sit against. So I'm going to do the centering ring in my 54mm adapter first, on the, like, this adapter part. Then I'm going to use that to set the thrust ring in the mother tube, and then I will use this ring once it's epoxied into the mother tube and cured to set the ring on the 38mm mount. So it should be consistent regardless of which mount I use. That's the plan. So let's get epoxying. I'm also, once this sets up a bit, gonna take a square and just kind of verify that it's, you know, square all the way around. I mean, I guess, again, I'm referencing the tube, so hopefully the tube was cut square, but that's a factory edge. So I'll trust it enough. And this is the 38. I'm gonna do aftering, mid ring, which I position halfway. And this guy, we're gonna leave until we have the thrust ring to reference in the mother tube. Alrighty, and a little bit of a pro tip while you're letting all these things dry, just put them on a dowel. I was trying to cradle them up here and they were rolling around doing all sorts of foolishness, but this is the way to do it. And then you can even spin them, and as long as there's no wobble in it, you know you've got it kind of straight. So that's how I recommend letting these cure.